So, if you ever wondered about how you can manage food cravings and how to deal with culprit foods that you tend to overeat on, you have to watch this video. Which sounded pretty cheesy to say, but it just might be true. So yeah, let's talk about this topic, culprit foods and food cravings. A bit of a vocal fry there. So let's talk about culprit foods first. What are culprit foods and how should we define them? The first thing I want to say about them is that the concept of culprit foods only makes sense in the context of your goals and in the context of your total energy or calorie allowance or energy budget, if you will. So what do I mean by that? To give you a really extreme example, green vegetables like broccoli, lettuce, cucumbers, those kinds of things. I don't think there has ever existed a person in history who said that green veggies are my culprit foods. Why is that the case? Well, even if you really love eating green veggies, they are so low in calories that even if you eat a huge amount of them, they're still not going to make you overeat. So another way of thinking about this is that a food is only a culprit food for you, or a craving for a given food is only a problem if the amount that you would naturally want to eat from that food is more than what you can eat from that food and not overshoot your calories or not deviate from your goals in some other way. So, for example, if you're following a really strict ketogenic diet, then even something like strawberries could be a problematic food item for you because they are really calorically sparse and they are a totally valid diet food. But in the context of a ketogenic diet, they could be problematic for you because it's easy to eat too many carbs from them. So your goals and your caloric allowance has to be taken into account here. To give you another example, oatmeal and rice. They were actually culprit foods for me not even that long ago. I overate on them regularly. I even had some binge eating episodes with them. And looking back, it was probably the case because at the time I was kind of chronically dieting. I was always trying to lose fat. And in that context, the foods that supported me towards my goals were things like fruits, veggies, lean protein sources, and oatmeal and rice. Even though they are not super yummy and hyper palatable, in that specific context, they were just a little bit too smooth in texture, they were just a little bit too calorically dense, and they qualified as culprit foods for me. Fast forward to today, and I'm on a lean, muscle gaining phase. I've been doing that for a couple of months. I'm at my heaviest ever body weight at the moment. I'm eating a lot of food. I don't track my calories directly, but I'm eating upwards of 4,000 calories probably. And I would not say that I have any sort of cravings for rice or oatmeal. And I'm actually eating a fair amount of them on my current dietary setup. Peanut butter, which I mentioned a lot of times on this channel, that it is a pretty big culprit food for me, and I had several overeating periods with peanut butter. It is still considered a culprit food for me, and I don't think that it will change ever for the rest of my life, simply because I cannot foresee any sort of life context in which I could fit into my diet the amount of peanut butter that I would naturally eat based on just how much I desire to eat it and not overshoot my calories. And it's not necessarily because if I bought a jar of peanut butter, I would just rip it open and devour the whole thing in 5 minutes. No, it is because I would just always go back to have another spoonful of it. You know, I would have a spoonful here, then I would do some work, and when I got a bit tired cognitively, I would be like, what would be a good way to release the tension? Oh, the peanut butter was so good, let's just go back and have another spoonful. And since another spoonful of peanut butter is 100, 150 calories already, it's really easy to overshoot your calorie target that way. But if I was a 400-pound, 7-foot-tall strongman, I don't think that the concept of culprit foods would make sense. I mean, imagine that you're a guy who's eating that much and you have a weak moment and you're devouring a 1 kilogram jar of peanut butter, which is like 6,000 calories. Cool, bad boy, you have 9,000 calories more to go to fulfill your caloric needs. So all this is just to say that a culprit food which causes a lot of cravings for you in one specific context may not cause the same type of cravings or issues in another context. Like oatmeal or rice was for me a couple of years ago when I was chronically dieting, is no longer a culprit food for me at the moment. So just keep that in mind. Now, let's say that's not the case and you still have a culprit food even during gaining phases, you have been lean bulking for 6 months and you still crave that specific food, or whenever you have it in the house, you overeat on that. So it's not a context dependent problem so much in your case, but it is just the case that you have just unbearable cravings for a certain food, and whenever you have it in your vicinity, it just gets you into trouble. What do you do in that context? Well, in that specific context, I do have an advice which is not very sexy, but nevertheless, I think it is very effective. And here it goes. You exile that food, you don't keep it in the house, and you don't eat it for a long time, and eventually your cravings for it will disappear. Yeah, I warned you, it's not gonna be sexy, but nevertheless, in my experience, it is very, very true. To bring it back to peanut butter again, it used to be a massive culprit food for me, but I have not had peanut butter for something like 2.5 years, and honestly, I don't even remember how peanut butter tastes like or how it smells like. So even though peanut butter was one of my biggest culprit foods, I wouldn't say that I have any sort of craving for it at the time. I mean, it literally doesn't even cross my mind at all on any given day that it would be so good to eat some peanut butter. Now, if I wanted to reignite that craving and that lust that I have for peanut butter, it would be really, really easy. And here is how I would do it. I would go down to the nearby grocery store right now, buy a jar of peanut butter, come home, take a whiff of it at first, and then would start slowly eating it with a spoon. My craving and my overwhelming desire to overindulge on peanut butter would get reignited in a heartbeat if I did just that. And this is actually a pretty well-known phenomenon that when you're eating something regularly, that food, the flavors, the smells, and everything associated with that food become salient in your mind. Basically, all the positive associations and memories that you have about that food is vividly there in your mind and is there to haunt you in your weak moments. On the other hand, when you don't have a food for a long time, all the positive associations that you have in your brain are starting to slowly fade away. Basically, the craving that was once there starts to dissipate completely. This is also something that people experience when they go on some sort of a special diet. For example, if you go on a very low carbohydrate diet and you don't have any sort of starches like rice and potatoes and bread for a long time, initially, it might be really hard to let go of them, but after some time, you just start not craving them at all. If you've been following my work for a long time, you may remember that last year, around this time, I actually did a 2-month-long carnivore diet experiment just to see how it would feel. And initially, I missed eating berries, frozen berries with cocoa powder and sweetener, which I love eating. I missed those things a lot initially, but after like 2 weeks, I actually kind of forgot how those things even tasted like. So I was like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that I would like eating them, but I don't really miss them actively in this moment because I kind of just forgot how berries taste like. So if you have a food item that gets you into trouble regularly and maybe you even had a couple of binges when you had that food around, the first line of action, in my opinion, is to just not have that food around. Get it out of the house. Don't buy it when you go to buy some foods in the grocery store, and just get it out of sight and out of mind. Now, this advice is something that is especially important to emphasize when it comes to sort of regular household foods like peanut butter. I mean, I don't think that any of you are surprised if I say that, well, if you have a problem not overeating on cheesecake with ice cream on top and chocolate sauce on top, I don't think that's that surprising to anyone that can get people into trouble, but culprit foods always have this little bit of a mystery around them. Like, why is it that I can't moderate myself with peanut butter when peanut butter is supposed to be this standard bodybuilding fitness food? Or why is it that I have a trouble moderating myself with avocados or oatmeal or rice or whatever it might be for you? Because we have this idea about these foods that we should be able to moderate ourselves with them and we should be able to keep them in the house, it's a little bit harder to let go of them cognitively. But I'm telling you that if you have a problem with it, the first line of action is to reduce the immediate temptation and increase the friction between you and the negative habit that you want to get rid of. I am very much a pragmatist when it comes to food cravings and culprit foods. I heard a statement from a psychologist not that long ago, which was something like, when you have a problem, your number one priority is to solve that problem, not to understand it intellectually. And it sounds like a bit of an overly simplistic and crude statement, but I think it's very true sometimes that we are so caught up with trying to understand why we have this given problem on an intellectual level that we lose sight of the fact that this problem is still actively harming our lives. The easiest analogy I can give you is if you have an exercise that regularly causes you pain in the gym, for example, the overhead tricep extension in my case. Yes, it is valuable to try to figure out why that exercise is causing you pain and which joint or muscle might be misaligned. But while you're doing all of that, your number one priority should be to stop doing that exercise. Because while you're figuring all of that out, it is important that you're not further degrading your joints and tendons. So yeah, guys, in conclusion, if you have a culprit food, then first of all, have some hope. It might just be the case that it is a culprit food in this specific context, let's say in the context of a diet, but later on in your maintenance or muscle building phases, it may no longer be a culprit food. And then if it remains to be a culprit food, then be a pragmatist and first of all, reduce the danger of overindulging on a regular basis on that food and exile it for a while. And you know what? Later on, you may try to reintroduce it, like I did in the case of oatmeal. I successfully reincorporated it into my life, and I'm enjoying oatmeal, and it's a delicious treat that I have on a daily basis. On the other hand, if you try to reintroduce a given food like I did with peanut butter a number of times and it still causes you problems, then hey, lesson learned, that is still a culprit food for you, and it may be the case that at least within the context of the goals that you have currently, which is to not be a 400-pound strongman, it may never be a food item that you can reintroduce into your life. Be a pragmatist, and there is a level of acceptance that goes with that, but hey, we have that level of acceptance with a number of things like party drugs or not crossing the red light on the street. A lot of the times we just have to accept a reality which is not that palatable at first, no pun intended, but in the long term it may just be the strategy that will lead to success. So that's all I had to say for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like it if you liked the video, or dislike it if you disliked it. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and with that, see you next time.